Hi everybody! Today we're going to be working in the Briar Colouring Book by Eastgate, and if any of you have watched my Spooky Pages video, then you may know that there's a page in here that I have been putting off for the last few years, as I am still a little bit intimidated by this one. I really don't want to mess it up, but I have scanned this one into the computer. We do have backup copies in case anything goes wrong, so I feel safe enough to just jump right in and start colouring this one today. And the one I'd like to work on is the little cat on the witch's cauldron. Again, as I showed in my Spooky Pages video, it's this one here. And yeah, still a little bit intimidating, this one. But I do have a bit of a vision I'd like to try and use for this picture. I would like to do this potion in the witch's cauldron to be glowing a kind of green colour, and then maybe have the background sort of fading off into the darkness, making the cauldron and the cat the main focus in the middle of the page. So hopefully this will go right. I'm not entirely sure how I will accomplish that kind of image I have in my head, but we're going to jump right in anyway. So I'll zoom us in and we'll get started. So I've zoomed us in a little bit there and adjusted the angle so I can see what I'm actually doing. And I'm going to start with the potion in the cauldron, because that's the main point of the picture that I want to be the focal point. So I thought I'd start with that, because if that goes right, then hopefully the rest of the picture will be going right. And we want to have this glowing kind of a slimy green sort of colour, I think would work quite well. And I think we're going to need a few different layers of markers for this one. I've decided to go with my usual markers and pencils, because as the idea I have for this picture is fairly difficult to actually get through, I think maybe I should stick to materials that I am fairly confident with. Maybe these bubbles on the top need to be gone around. This one I'm using here, this marker, is the pale lemon yellow, which is GO20. And this one has kind of a fluorescent sort of colouring to it, so I thought maybe that might help give us that glowing idea that we are on about here. And if we do come in with the white gel pen, like I'm planning, hopefully this will look as if the potion is actually glowing. We will have some of that glow reflecting onto the cat and maybe this little mouse here, a few things around the edge of the actual cauldron, and then the rest of the background pretty indistinct, even though there is quite a few details going on there. I want that background to be fairly indistinct, fairly desaturated, and yeah, fading away into the actual background there. Maybe be starting in the middle of the cauldron with more of the white highlights going out towards the green on the edges there. And this book is pretty much single-sided for anyone who's wanting to maybe try using markers in it. It does have some small illustrations on the back of the pages. I'll just flip over and show you quickly. We do have some slightly smaller illustrations here on the back, but yeah, I think I'm fairly comfortable with losing that little griffin there, as long as I can get my favourite picture done, which is this one. So that's our base with the lemon yellow there, which will hopefully help add to that glow effect I want to have going on. And I've picked out some more kind of acidy green colours here. This is G050 Celadon Green and G080 Limeade. These are from the 104 set of markers. I want to try and have that yellow fading out to the outside into the green and kind of blending into the green around the outside. So we'll start with this Celadon Green, and I might come in with pencils to do a little bit of shading on top here, I think, especially to get those bubbles looking right, how I want those to be looking. But I'm hoping that if I bring in a little bit of shading with the markers here, I won't have to go so hard with the pencils, and it will cut down on the time with a bit of luck. So I'm blending that Celadon Green into the yellow. We've already got a pretty kind of evil looking potion colour going on there. Maybe we should go inside some of these bubbles. That seems to work. A little bit of pencil shading, I think, wouldn't go amiss there, but I'm kind of playing by ear and kind of feeling my way along here, because yeah, I don't have all that much experience colouring glowing green, but I do seem to be playing with glow effects quite a lot recently. The last video also a little bit of a glow effect going on, and it is proving to be quite fun. I have always loved playing with light sources and stuff like that, so yeah, that is something fun to have a bit of a go at for this Halloween season. Just trying to blend in that green a little bit into the yellow. Hopefully the background should be fairly quick to do as well, as I do want the background to be fairly indistinct. And not have the objects showing up super much. Thankfully this candle is not lit. I'm going to leave that candle unlit, I think, because the witch has wandered off, maybe shopping or something, buy some more eye of newt, and left the cat alone with the potion, so the candle is not lit. This next colour is the Limeade, that is the G080. I thought that one would work fairly well for this kind of evil looking potion. We'll blend that in with the Celadon Green. Yeah, I think there'll definitely be some pencil shading involved there. That does seem to be working as a base though, I'm thinking. We could have something pretty good going here. Definitely want to bring in the white gel pen and a little bit of shading around those bubbles, I'm thinking. Okay, that's not too bad. And I think the same kind of idea on the main areas of glow here would work. Although, yeah, I'm no expert with this kind of colouring. I am making this up as we go along here. So we'll see if this works. So we'll start coming in with the yellow. That's the pale lemon yellow. And cat's foot would be fairly well highlighted, I think, there. Little paws. Or just guessing pretty much. Trying to figure out here which bits of the cat would be getting the light hitting it, the bits that are further or nearer towards the potion. So maybe his chin here, the bottom side of his face probably. It's being lit from underneath there, so he wouldn't have too much light coming up towards the top of his head there, but I do want him to be standing out from the background. So we're going to have him the darker black. The background is going to be more muted kind of sepia colours is the plan I do have for the background, to have that orange sepia contrasting with the green, I thought. And yeah, keeping to that Halloween kind of spooky colour palette. And that kind of slightly fluorescent yellow seems to be working quite well for a glow, I think. I think I'll leave that as it is without coming in with the other shades of the pens. And maybe just maybe add a little bit of green with the pencils to that one if that does need it. So we would have a glow around this rim here as well, I think. Face of this little mouse or rat here, and this little guy as well. He'll be fairly well lit up, being that close to the edge of the cauldron, I'm thinking. Okay, there's our kind of main areas of glow there done, I think, but I have left the markers out in case I need to go back for a few little touch-ups there. So here comes the scary part, and there has been a little bit of a change of plan here. Originally, I was going to go for kind of brown sepia tones in the background, but I'm thinking now maybe that might be a little bit too much contrast if I want to really amp up this green here in the cauldron. So what I've decided to do is use this marker here, that's E434, and go over all of the background with that marker. It's kind of a mid-tone, sort of very desaturated green. I'll show you kind of here what I mean. Yeah, it's kind of a mid-tone, very desaturated green. So I'm going to go over the whole of the background with that, I think, and then shade on top with pencils, more than likely to give the definition to the objects we have there. But I want the very top of the image here to be really dark, bringing in a lot of black so that our cat and his cauldron are standing out as being shiny. So the cat himself I might do as a blue back, the background as this kind of really dark grey with some black for the shading. Just thinking out loud here and figuring things out on the fly as we go. And yeah, this part is really a little bit scary because we're covering up the whole of the background. And these markers unfortunately don't have a chisel tip. These have a brush nib and a fine kind of nib to them. So this is going to be a little bit time consuming, but I'm hoping if I can make the vision come to life here, this will be looking pretty cool at the end. Maybe a little tip as I am colouring in the background all with one marker here. If anyone is brave enough or crazy enough just to cover the whole of their background with one marker as I'm doing here, it's still quite good practice to keep within the lines of each object because that kind of cuts down on any blotchiness of the marker being noticeable because each area of colour is kind of inside its little object, so any streakiness won't be so apparent. Some of these areas, like the handle of the wooden spoon and this broomstick here, they're far enough away they'd be getting some shadow, but they are close enough they would be getting a little bit of glow. So I've added a little bit of the Dragon Well tea colour to the end of the spoon there, and I'm going to try and blend that out into this one called E432 Vert Celadon, which is a very slightly lighter version of that colour. So you can see that spoon is starting to blend away into the darkness, and we can come over the top of that with pencils to make that stand out, give it a little bit of colour as well. On this broomstick I'm going to do the same. I'm going to start with the actual background colour, coming in with a little bit of that lighter colour there. Same on the broomstick. These areas will probably be getting some glow, so those areas can have the lemon yellow. And the spoon, definitely on the spoon. Yeah, that kind of looks as if it's fading off into the shadows there with that lemon yellow. And I think maybe the same along the bottom here. We're going to start going in with the darker colour, blend off into the light colour a little bit, and then actual colour along the edges of the items. I may possibly end up going over that shading I've already done if I do end up doing the cauldron black. But as usual, I am playing it by ear and figuring things out as I go. And at least, if nothing else, we have plotted out here where we do want our main shadows to go, done a little bit of underpainting maybe. Grayscale, sort of, as it were, to show where our shadows, we do want those to actually be coming from. And I think more light would be going upwards towards the kind of tummy of this cat here, along these little bits here, rather than will be coming down. But we may be able to give a little bit of a glow to edges such as this chalice, maybe, I think it is. A few little bit of edges on this carving with the fish. Maybe the candle. Maybe that's gone a little bit too far. That's maybe a little bit too far. We'll go over that. That with the grey, that came a little bit too far down. Okay, fair enough. Now the cat we want to be black, but as a little bit of an experiment, I've picked out a couple of red greys, RG080, that one there, which is red grey 08. And I've also picked out RG050, which is red grey at 05. And I'm thinking maybe we can shade the cat or give him a little bit of a background of the red grey to make him stand out as a contrast to the background, instead of having those sepia colours in the background to make the rest of our foreground stand out. We can we can make the cat a red grey. The background is green grey, and as both colours are kind of desaturated, maybe that will give us a little bit of a contrast to bring our cat forward. He will be shaded, as I said, to look darker, to look black, but we'll see what we can do here. And coming down his leg there, we will try and blend into the lighter red grey. Trying to add a few little kind of first strokes down his legs there. From the outside lines, he does look like he's a fluffy little cat, so we want to be making him look slightly furry there. Something along those lines, maybe we can make work. But yeah, as I've said a couple of times, this is trying to figure out how to make the idea work, because yeah, ideas do come along and you have no idea how to actually execute them. You just know, yeah, if I can make this work, it's going to be super cool, but figuring out how to make it work is part of the battle a lot of the time. Got that glow coming in there. We might bring in the green as shading further down there, but we're going to give him the red grey as a base, I'm thinking. And this little kitty cat with his kind of green glow in the potion, I think is going to be the main focus of the picture. So everything else I'm not too bothered about, to be honest. As long as I can make it look vaguely like there's something in the background. There might be a kind of witch's cottage or something. A little bit more of a highlight there. That's giving quite a nice green colour over the top of that, grey there. We definitely need, yeah, pencil shading. A few little bits here and there. That yellow is lighter than the grey, so we are lifting the colour from the grey marker a little bit. That does happen when you go with a lighter alcohol marker over the top of a darker one. You do get the colour kind of lifting up slightly. Almost like a colourless blender, but yeah, not quite as dramatic. So yeah, we can go over the top of that darker grey a little bit. Slightly subtler, more subtle highlights. Yeah, I'm liking that. I'm liking the way the cat is looking. I am liking that, yeah. Maybe, yeah, starting to think maybe this idea will work. Should I go for the red grey for the cauldron as well, or lean more into the blue grey for that? We probably should lean more into a cooler blue grey for the cauldron, I'm thinking, to again make that look different to the cat. We actually have a green grey that's fairly dark. We have a green grey 110 toner grey. Okay, yeah, that's not too bad. That might actually work as a base for the cauldron, I'm thinking. If we are shading over the top, and we can blend that in with the yellow, see if it will lift any of that colour. Possibly not. There'll definitely be a little bit of trial and error involved here, but even if a little bit of kind of underpainting here, figuring out shadows and stuff ends up being coloured over completely, at least it's helped us kind of plan where the shadows are going to go and help with that pencil shading a little bit. I'm not sure if this carving on the cauldron I'm going to make gold, kind of a dull gold or not. So for now I will leave that, I think, just until I figured out what I am actually going to be doing with that. Yeah, we need to blend that into the green, I think. A little bit more there. That's looking like it. I'll blend that more into the background colour. That's the Dragon Well tea. I'm not usually a fan of green, to be perfectly honest with you guys, but yeah, that that is quite a nice, very desaturated green there. Okay, in the few little areas we do have with the streaking here with those pens, I'm going over with the pale lemon yellow a little bit and adding a little bit of glow there to the actual pot itself, and I think that's worked really well. It's giving that the pot a little bit of a shine to it, even though it won't be reflecting a lot down here away from the actual surface of the potion. I think that's worked well to bring the colours together there. Things working a lot better than I expected. We can blend that out more into celadon green. Not sure, just trying. I'm thinking that potion on his foot should be the brightest green. Maybe a little bit of shading to those. I think, yeah, we're doing okay. I'm quite happy with how that's going. As I said, this one is one that I did. Oops, that's the wrong grey. That's the red grey. Oh, this is the one I meant. A little bit of celadon green there, just to blend in a little bit of that glow around the rim. I think, yeah, I think we have got that working pretty well there. And I'm guessing now it's about time to start coming in with pencil, especially for this background here. If I can get this background here, if I can get that working, I think I will be good to go. And the pencils I'd like to use are the Castle Arts Harmonious pencils. Because those colours are really desaturated, I think they might work pretty well with this idea I've got of the background being far away and in the shadows. I think there might be a couple of Prismacolors involved, maybe for the candles, to make those look white, depending on how well my Harmonious pencils go over the top there. But let's have a look. Let's see what we can do. Okay, let's start with this background here, see if we can get something going on. I've picked out to do a little bit of shading for this back wall first of all. a couple of Castle Arts Harmonious pencils. I've got Storm Grey for a shadow grey, and then the Pine Green to try and introduce a little bit of colour there. I've also got the Prismacolor Black and the white, because those are a lot more opaque, and I'm thinking maybe those will give some deeper shadows and highlights. So most of the top of the picture, actually, we do want to be fading away into the shadows. I don't want everything to be picked out. I want mainly this area here to be pretty much picked out. So yeah, trusting the process here again. I'm going to start by trying to black out some of what is towards the top of this picture, even though that poppy seed there goes outside. And again, trusting the process here. Not entirely sure how this will work, but yeah, that seemed to go over the poppy seeds at the top there. So yeah, we want a lot of that to be blacked out. Sorry, I got interrupted by the doorbell there, but yeah, we are trying to maybe black out a lot of what is going on way back in the background here, which I could in theory have done with the markers and had a bit of go there, but I wasn't quite sure of my colour choices, so opting to go for the safer route, and pencils can be erased. So yeah, we're starting with the pencils, and hopefully we'll be able to blend these out. This is the theory. I'm not sure how well the pencils will blend with these harmonious colours. Maybe we should slightly pick out these poppy heads a little bit. Let's see if we can bring in the background colour, darken those slightly. Just another layer of the background colour. Maybe very, very light touch of the white. It's kind of showing there is something there. And that is with the black Prismacolor and the Pine Green from the Harmonious set. And I've come in with another layer of the background colour for a little bit of shading on these poppy heads here. This all we want to be. Yeah, in the background, so kind of barely discernible in the background. So maybe, yeah, maybe it's an idea to come in with that second layer of the background colour to shade the objects. Maybe we went a little too hard with that Prismacolor black here on the kind of poppy seed head, so we'll pick that out a little bit clearer. We don't want it super clear. The main idea when you are drawing something that is glowing, that's got to be the brightest thing in the picture. We don't really want any super white highlights unless we are around that kind of a glowy area, which I will come in with the gel pen. Well, that's taken a little bit more blending than I thought it would, but we've got something along the lines of what I was wanting there going on in the background. And that is mainly by shading with the black Prismacolor and then coming in and blending it out with the pine green from the Harmonious Castle Art set, which is quite a dark desaturated green. I am using the Dragon Well Tea colour to come in for another layer or two, to add a little bit more shading on the objects that are closer to, like the poppy heads here. That seems to be helping. And as we're coming further and further closer towards our front of the picture, where our little kitty cat is and things like that, I'll be adding a little bit more colour, a little bit less desaturated colour as we do get closer to the front of the picture. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that is going there. And I'll just show with this area here what I was doing. I was coming in with the black Prismacolor and putting in the main shadows. We have there, a little bit of wood texture there, so I might try and suggest that in this little bit here. And then I was coming in with the pine green over the top of the Prismacolor and blending that out into my background. So that is making sure the black isn't as such a stark black, because I do want to save the starkest black for our little kitty cat. So any black I've done in this background areas, I have gone over the top of it with this pine green colour to kind of make it not quite as dark of a black. And yeah, I think we've got something that's working here. Maybe not entirely the vision I was thinking of, but we do have something going on here that I think we'll be able to make work. We can add some white Prismacolor. Not very, not pressing very hard there, but wanting to give a little bit of texture in the background. Not quite indecipherable anything is there, but I do want it to be way back into the shadows. Okay, that's looking pretty good, I think. I haven't really used the grey I picked out. I was just sticking to the black and the green with a little bit of white touches there. But we do basically want everything to blend out into that background as much as possible. This one is called Pale Apple. Maybe we can add a little bit of a green apple colour to these apples here. We're making them green rather than red because I want the red to be on our cat. Our cat is the red grey there, so we want him to be the warmer colour, but I'm thinking maybe we can add a little bit of suggestion of colour to these apples here in the background. Blend that into the pine grey maybe. Pine green rather, not pine grey. Not quite as green as I would like them to be there, but I don't really want to bring in any of the kind of Granny Smith sort of colour, yellow green that we do get on apples, because that would be pulling away too much from our glow that we have happening here. I want to keep all my yellow greens down here, and with that bright kind of glow we've got going on a cat, and I want the red colours as well to be for our little cat, so he does stand out from the background, which is a change for me because any kind of black colour I usually colour is blue based, but we'll see how we do end up. We have storm grey as well. Maybe we can bring that in for a little bit of shadow here. Yeah, that's helping to make the apples look a little bit different to the background, I think, bringing in a little bit of that kind of blue grey, storm grey, but still keeping it desaturated and not too much colour going on there. So yeah, I think this is going to work. I really do think this is going to work. Maybe we could bring in some sort of blue or purple to the witch's hat here. I don't think I really want any more black to be going on there. So that would leave a lot of black in the picture. Colour the leaf with the pine green. Give it a little bit of highlight with the white, I think. Yeah, apples are shiny, so a few little white highlights. Yeah, I don't think will go too amiss, but things can always be changed up a little bit later on, and I really need to buy some more of that white Prismacolor. But yeah, I think that's working. I think we're definitely working there. Okay, so I'll finish off this little corner here, and then we'll see what we can do with the witch's hat. Let's go in with this dragon tea colour and build up these shadows a little bit more on our witch's hat. It is behind a piece of paper there. Not sure what's happening here, just need some vague shapes to be picked out in the background there, I think. Not quite sure what is going on, maybe some paper or something there, I think. Okay, we do have lots of indenting and folding going on with this hat as well. These hat pins are metal, so there might be some little glints there of the colour that we have glowing down here, but I think I can make that work with some white gel pen and popping in some highlights with those greens that I've still left out. I don't really want to bring in too red of a purple because that wouldn't stand out too much from our little kitty cat, I don't think. So I need to find a colour that would stand out from the cat. We would definitely have maybe some white highlights here. Oh, black shading in there, that will probably be gone over with another colour. I'm thinking blue or purple. I don't want something that will look too odd with this green we've put across the whole background, and I don't want something that will blend into the cat super much. Night blue here, is that too much of a difference, do we think? We only really want a hint of colour coming through. We don't want the background to be a fully monochrome. We do want little bits of colour kind of peeping through here. Let's try this one, Mellow Sage. And we need to blend that in with the pine green maybe. At the moment, not quite sure if this is working quite as well as I would like it to be honest. It's maybe too much of that original colour background showing through, so Let's try blending it out. Maybe a little bit of a lighter blue. This one is Ocean Sapphire. Maybe not entirely happy with how that is looking. This is the night blue again. Okay, not entirely sure what to do about these stars and moons here. Should we pick those out in the black? And then the white. Okay, a little bit of work had to go on there. I think I've got that witch's hat looking okay now, so I'm going to go ahead and finish off the rest of that, and that is with the night blue. I brought in the ocean sapphire as well, along with the black and the white, and I think we've got something actually working there, so I'll carry on and finish that. bringing in a little bit of the storm grey colour as we get up to the top of this picture here with the hat. I do want that to be blending in a little bit more into the background as it gets up and further away. But we're still going to maybe pick out a few little edges with the white. Bits that might be catching a little bit of light. I'm bringing in a little bit of scribbly texture as well to make it look as if the hat is made of some sort of woven fabric or something. Just picking out a little bit of texture to make it a little bit more interesting there. I'll just go in and pick out the stars, little patterns we have going on, although not as much towards the top of the picture. I'm going to try blending in this green, the pine green, as we get a little bit further towards the top of this hat. Blending that into the background a little bit more. I have no idea if that'll work, but definitely worth a try. Let me tone down this blue a little bit. I think maybe we're getting a little bit too heavy-handed, maybe, with the blue down there. Tone that down with the green. Okay, not bad. We will add in some brighter white highlights towards the bottom here. Still not super highlighty because we're not as close to the source of the light, but we are getting closer. I do apologise if I'm not speaking super much throughout this colouring because I am trying to concentrate and figure out how this is actually going to work. It's not something that's in my comfort zone, just an idea I thought I would try and figure out how it works. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure where we're going with this one, but I'm thinking the idea is working about as well as I could maybe have it work. I think that's looking something like a witch's hat there. Now we do have these hat pins, and these would be a metal, I'm presuming, so they would be fairly well lit. If there was any highlights going on there, they would probably be catching it. So we'll go in with the black, and then maybe this storm grey a little bit, and a lighter grey if I can find one. We don't really want pure white on its own in anything in the background so much. Let's try this ash. What kind of grey is that? In theory, those would be reflecting a little bit of the glow. So let's see if we can make something happen with the lemon yellow. I wonder if that will show up over the layer of pencil we have going there, but maybe a tiny little bit of that lemon yellow glow. And where's the white pen? If we do come in with a little bit of a highlight, just dab off. Tidy that up with the black maybe. Tiniest little bits of white highlights, but the green glow in the middle there, that's still where our eyes are going to first. So I'm thinking that should work. That should work. Let's just finish off this one here. So again, that's the black, the storm grey, a little bit of a lighter grey that was called ash, I think. Letting the green show through, and again, probably a little bit of a white highlight that we dab off. Okay, I think that's working. So for the hatband there, I'm just adding in some shadow with another layer of the base coat that we had going on. Giving everything that kind of green undertone, which is what we wanted. A little bit more colour coming in now as we are getting a little bit closer to the light source. We'll try the black and the storm grey. Maybe the ash colour as well here for a little bit of highlight that isn't the stark white. And that's not too bad. We do have this kind of hat bin coming through here. Pretty hard to see what is happening here. There is something happening, but I'm not entirely sure what. So we're just going to suggest some stuff going on in the background here, I think. We'll finish off this hatband around the hat. Suggest something going on behind our little cat here. Maybe we'll go back to the green because we are behind the cat. And we do want to have that contrast going on. So again, I'm going over the black. I'm not letting that black be too stark. That would possibly be the hat behind there. So we'll fill that in with the blue. Getting towards this kind of mid-ground of the picture here, we want things to start being a little bit lighter. Not as bright as our glow that we have going on from the cauldron, but definitely a little bit lighter. So I'm going to start bringing in a few more lighter colours there. I don't want to go pure full on white though, because we want to have the glow to be the lightest thing in the actual picture when we bring in the white gel pen without dabbing it off down here in the glow from our potion. Because as I've said, if you want something to look as if it's glowing, it's got to be the lightest thing in the picture. So we don't want any more pure white in the picture unless it's around this cauldron or the things that it's shining on. Everything in the back we want to be, we still want to give it a little bit of shape, but we want it to be pushed back into the background. So in the harmonious pencils, we don't really have too many kind of cream colours or anything like that. This one is called Ammonite. I'm thinking maybe that's a tad too close to the colour in the background maybe, but if we add in little bit of that white highlight and blend it out with that colour maybe, and then come in to another layer of the green marker behind our cat, the green dragon tea. Whatever that one was called. Yeah, maybe that will work a little bit. Back to the storm grey behind our cat. For this book, let's try and bring in more of a brown grey to again hint at more different colours here. This one is called Driftwood. Maybe slightly too close to the colour of our cat, but for now we'll go with it. This one is called Porpoise. A little bit of the white. We want to have those pages blending in as well, so let's come in with the green. Maybe we'll need a little bit more of a black here behind our cat, behind that paper, because this book is quite far back, even though the pages will be a light colour. The book is quite far back, so we're going to have to make it a little bit darker. I went over that book cover with a layer of the pine green, and then I went over again with the actual background marker. So that's just got a hint of that reddish colour to it now and shouldn't be pulling too much away from our cat. Okay, this one here, I like to do my glass bottles green. So let's come in with this one, a seaweed colour. This is a very dark desaturated green. And this is glass, and that is fairly close to that glow there. So yeah, I'm thinking we would be getting some glow onto that glass bottle maybe. So I'll come in with that lemon yellow. Yeah, just over the top of our background colour. Glass is very, very reflective, so we would have some of that showing through, I think. We'd have a pretty strong white highlight down there, I think, so I'm pressing pretty hard on the prism colour there. I'm not sure if this bottle is supposed to have any liquid in it. To make life simple, I'll just treat it as if it is empty. This is the pale apple colour I did use on the apples in the background. And this bottle would have the white highlights reflecting from that potion there, I think. Close enough to the middle now that we can bring in a few highlights there, I'm thinking. Corks are generally brown. Let's try a hint of this one to give a little bit of a brown tinge. Again, I don't want to get too close to the colour of the cat like I did before. I think I actually fixed that by going over what we did. But this one is called Black Olive, and I think that's just brown enough without being too close to the colour of the cat. Just to add a little bit more colour there. Go over that with this ammonite colour. And highlights. Black cork. Maybe we'd have some black there. I'm not sure this cork would have much in the way of highlights, but I think we need a bit to distinguish it from the apples in the background there. Just just adding a little bit of shadow behind the bottle with the pine green that we use in the background to make sure that does stand out. A bit of luck. We'll come in with the background colour. Okay, my bottle is looking a little bit wonky there, but I think I can live with it. I really want to get onto the trying to make that glow and that little kitty cat. I really want to do that. But first things first, we do have to work on this background. Get that up and running. Alright, so this I think here over on this side of the picture here, I think that's supposed to be a crystal ball. So that would definitely be reflecting some of this glow. So I'll come over the top with that yellow, and I may even come over with the green there as well. And some white highlights. That is the pale lemon yellow, which is sort of a luminous yellow, kind of a highlighter colour. I'm not sure if our greens will show up on that crystal ball, but we'll try. We'll bring in the white pencil, pressing pretty hard. I'm going to bring back the cat's whiskers with the white gel pen a little bit later on. And some pretty big white highlights I think we'll have here. I've just filled in this little bit of shadow here with the black. I'm going over the black with the pine green there. The pine green up into the crystal ball maybe? I have no idea what this would actually look like. We'll try and make sure we have a few little bits of reflection going on here maybe. Or shadows at least. There's the apple green. This one was called Pale Apple. I'm not entirely sure if that is the kind of thing that would be reflecting in that crystal ball there. Tempted to bring in a little bit of blue. I'm tempted to bring in a little bit of blue. This one's called Ocean Sapphire. Maybe that hat could be reflecting. It's fairly close. We have a hat over there, so maybe that could be reflecting in our crystal ball. Try bringing in the white. Possibly have shadows underneath. Look as if it could be a crystal ball. Maybe it does. The bottom of it wasn't marked, but I've just marked in a little line there that could possibly be the bottom of the crystal ball. My perspective may be slightly off. I have estimated a little bit, but yeah, we're going to have something that looks a bit like a crystal ball there. This is Storm Grey. I'm just pushing these highlights back a little bit because we are close to the cauldron, but we don't want this to be the main focus. So trying to make those highlights a little bit softer maybe. Yeah, there would be a lot of glow going on there. And possibly be a little bit of our glass bottle reflecting here. I'm no expert on reflections, and yeah, I'm definitely not very good at drawing glass, but we would have, I think, a little bit of that glass bottle reflecting there. After a little bit of fiddling there, I think I've got something that kind of looks like a crystal ball. We might have gone a little bit over the edge there, but yeah, I think we're looking a little bit like a crystal ball there, so I'm pretty good to call that done. I'm not sure again what is happening here behind our little cat. I might just blend that into the pine green and the black again behind there, just to have some sort of a background happening. This might be pieces of paper or something, I'm thinking, but I'm just gonna, yeah, do the black, blend it into the pine green, and call that a background, I think. That'll do for a little bit of a background there, I think. I am getting quite excited to move on and start working on the actual potion. Okay, a few little hints of yellow there, along with the pine green and the black, and I think we have that much figured out now. I'm not entirely sure what would be happening down here. I think we have a lot of hat pins. Do we have the rest of the hat there? I'll just quickly check the picture in the bag to see what is actually going on. No, we seem to have a folded piece of fabric or something along those lines there. But I want to keep it fairly dark, so first I'll go in with the black. Maybe try blending out with that pine green again. These in the background here seem to be hat pins and stuff along those lines. So maybe we'll try and have a couple of reflections going on there. We have a couple of bits of broom sticking out here as well. You might have a little bit of glow coming in here, especially if that hat pin is metal. Okay, this might be glowing. Let's add in a few little bits of glow here on the side. The yellow, these metal bits here. I won't go too far back because we're getting a little bit too far away from the actual glow over there. Back to the pine green, I think, for this background. A little bit of darker storm grey to add a little bit of shadows to these metal hat pins here. These will be in the background though, not the focus of the picture at all, so I'm not being super ridiculous. Some white pen highlights. This is a little bit of the limeade colour that I've picked up there. Getting a little bit of that glow. There we go, as I said there, not much detail needed. That far in the background, and I've kept it pretty much monochrome there. Now to move on to making this cauldron look as if it is actually glowing. And the main thing to do to make anything look as if it is glowing is to make that the lightest part of the whole picture. You don't want really any pure white in the picture apart from the glow itself and maybe any bright highlights as these ones here because they are on the glass. Those would be quite bright highlights. There will be some bright highlights on the cat himself as well because he's really close to the glow. Anything that is close to the glow will be the bright white. And to really emphasize that glow as well, we want to go for contrast in the areas of glow. So I've got the black Prismacolor here, and we're going to go in with the black. And originally we based this little cat with two different colors of red grey. We have a dark red grey and a kind of medium tone red grey. I can give you those numbers. They are RG050, that is red grey number 5, the lightest red grey. And we have RG080, which is red grey 08, the darker red grey. And because we've gone for the darker red greys in the background for our little cat here, I want to keep his colours fairly kind of warm to the purple and red rather than the blue that I usually use for colouring a black cat or any kind of black fur. So as we're working with the Prismacolors here, I have picked out the Black Grape PC996 and the Black Raspberry 1095 to try and give a little bit of dark black but towards the warmer side sort of shading to our little cat here. I'm hoping I can make this work to make him look as if he is a black cat. I am used to using the blue to shade any kind of black fur, so with a bit of luck this will work to at least give a stylized kind of black tint to this fur here. And because this is a red, a kind of a black raspberry red, this will give us a contrast with that green that we have, hopefully. So there we go, that seems to be working, I think. I do want the cat to look as if he is black rather than purple or red, so I'm coming back in with the black to bring a little fur texture there down over the black and the kind of raspberry colours. I've also picked out some greens to maybe give a little bit more of a glow to this little kitty cat here. The first one is Chartreuse, which is PC989. I'm hoping this is a kind of a fluorescent sort of looking green that might work to make this little cat look as if he does have the green glow to him. And then of course we do have the white gel pen to highlight the very edges here because he is being very strongly lit, so his fur would be becoming almost white on the edges with the really strong glow. Well, at least that is standing out, and not the most natural colour, I don't think, for a black cat to actually be the purple and the red. But because we did come in with the red greys, I think um, we couldn't really work with the blue on top of that. So yeah, I think we can work with that. Let's see, let's work a little bit more into him and see what we can make happen here. With the black, I'm going to concentrate in the areas that would be darkest. Bring the purple and the red into the areas that would be more highlighted but not quite close enough to the glow to be highlighted in the green, if that makes sense. I have a slightly darker green here, this apple green. Let's see if that's possibly totally the wrong order to be doing this, and definitely not the right kind of order to be explaining things for a tutorial, but this is the black grape and purple. He'll probably end up looking more like a rainbow cat than a black cat, but at least he'll be a rainbow cat that does have a green and glow going on. with a bit of luck. Onto the black raspberry. Let's bring a bit more black into there to hopefully make him look as if he's more like a black cat and less like the rainbow cat that we seem to be getting. I actually don't think it's looking too bad. I don't think it's too rainbow. We can probably work with it. Let's see if we bring in the white highlights there, especially around there. Give him white whiskers. Yeah, I don't hate it. I really don't hate it. I think we can work with that. I think with that kind of neon greenish yellow glow we have going on, I think, yeah, we can work with that. Especially if we bring, I think, maybe a few kind of white fur marks up through that glow. I'm going over the line art with my fur marks to make him look as if he is a fluffy little cat. And anything that is super close to the glow, I will probably actually go over the line art itself, especially around this edge of the potion here, a little bit later on. Bring in that apple green. The chartreuse, wasn't it? Yes, so I'm liking where this is going now. The purple and the red, interesting choice maybe, but it is seeming to work to go for this little black cat. Bringing in the purple to shade, just going over the top of the red quite lightly, and I think that's helping tie things together quite a lot. Make him look like he is a black cat rather than a purple and red one. these bits of further are a little bit further away from our glow. I'm going to highlight with the white pencil along the edges, just to make him stand out a little bit from the background, I think. Although, as we do go further up his tail here, he would be blending more into the background as he is quite far away from the glow there. So we don't have to be too particular about making sure his tail stands out. I will go over his tail a little bit more with the black, as we are getting further away from the glow there, so we don't need the contrast with the red. So I'm going to go and bring this black in so he does look like a black cat rather than a red or a purple one. But having those colours into the black is making it stand out a little bit more from the background. That was the black with the green. Here we have the black with the red. So yeah, we do have that contrast there. Keep bringing a tiny little bit of the white and highlights just to make him look furry. Yeah, I'm quite liking that, I think. Completely outside my comfort zone, really, because usually I bring in the blue when I'm trying to do black fur. His foot there would really be glowing. He actually has potion on his foot. I'm just adding a little bit of detail there with the Prussian green, which is a darker green I picked out to maybe do the bubbles. I think that might work quite well down on these areas that are close to the glow. But this whole picture, a little bit of an experiment, figuring out how to get this glow maybe working. Probably come a little bit too far up there. Oh, don't worry. This foot should really be a lot glowier than that, so I'm going to knock that fur back a little bit. I've decided to take the lightest green, this chartreuse, and just go over and add a few little hints of it into his fur colour, especially on his body there, where we are quite far away from the glow. And I think that's working quite well. Yeah, that has worked. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay. Let's move on to a few little details of this potion, and then it's probably going to be time to call it for a day. So for some shadows here, I'm coming in with Prussian green, again from Prismacolors. I'm going to add some shadows and stuff to these bubbles. Maybe a little bit of shading around the outside, around these little mice here. And we have apple green, PC912. And lastly, the chartreuse green, which is PC989. Make sure there's colour there where we're going to be bringing in the white gel pen. And I just want to see before I do sign off for the day today what we can make happen with the white highlights here. So I've gone over all the line art actually inside the cauldron there, and the edges between the surface of the potion here and the edge of the cauldron. I've also added in a few of my own little sparkles and little bubbles. I think we need to a little bit of shadow there. There's droplets on his foot. Not sure if we can use the I need to bring in a bit of shadow here behind his leg so we can add some fur lines. I'll just pop in this little extra bit of shading behind this little mouse guy here. I'm guessing that's what they are. They look like the mice to me. Okay, that's how we're looking so far, but my phone battery's getting a bit low now, so I'm going to have to call it for today. I'm pretty happy with how it's gone. I do like the way that the background is actually fading into the background there with those really muted colours. So I'm looking forward to finishing that one off next time. So we'll catch up with you next time, which for you will be a couple of seconds. So bye for now. See you soon. Okay, guys, we're back with our little Halloween cat here. I didn't really do much off camera in between these two different sessions. I did add a little bit of Dovecraft glitter glue into the cauldron there. That is the clear glitter glue, which does have a kind of a green sort of sheen to it. So I'm hoping that is showing up there. It's a bit hard to tell from the angle I am looking. But today we're going to be working on the foreground here. These bits that are actually closer to our source of the glow. And in the first kind of part of the video, we did go in with our background colour marker and mark in a few shadows here. I'm not sure if I'll be leaving those the same kind of colour or just using that as a guide, or maybe kind of like grayscale to show me where to put the shadows. But to be honest, I hadn't really figured out how we're actually going to do this foreground here. So let's jump right in. And I think first of all we should really get this broomstick here sorted out. That is further in the background, that is behind our cauldron. I do want to have a little bit of colour creeping into it, but I was thinking maybe for the handle at least to come in with some warm greys to give the impression that might be wood. So I've picked up some of the French greys here, maybe to work on that broomstick handle. We've got the 90%, the 70% and the 50%, PC 1074, 1076 and 1072. To maybe add a hint of colour into this broomstick handle here, but still be fairly desaturated and not trying to take away any attention from our glow that we have going on there. Yeah, that's working pretty well. This is the 90% French grey, the darkest colour. There won't be very much of the lighter colours here at all. I'm thinking we are fairly far away from that glow. This is the 70%. And then the 50%. Very subtle highlights we want to have happening there, I think, on that broomstick handle. Maybe we can come in a little bit with the black as we get further away here. But still we're playing, trying to figure out how this would actually work here. We do want to have it getting darker as it goes further away, so that was the black. Maybe come back in with a little bit more of its 90% and emphasize the fact that we are kind of moving away there. And the white maybe for some very subtle highlights here. And give that kind of wood grain sort of appearance. Yeah, I think we've got something we can maybe work with there. It's not the focus of the picture, so I think as long as we stand out as being slightly further towards the camera than the background, and these colours are a lot warmer than the green we did use for our background marker and the pine green we were using for most of our shading, so I'm thinking maybe that might work. For the bristles on the broomstick we need to be coming a little bit lighter, but I might carry on using that 90% French grey for a little bit of the shadow here. Okay. And the 50% French grey maybe. I think these broomsticks are made of maybe straw or something like that. So this would be a kind of a cream colour, yellowy cream colour in real life, but we don't really want it to be that obviously yellow because that would take a little bit too much attention, I think. So this one is called Sandbar Brown, and that does have a more kind of a golden tone to it. come in with the white on these edges. And as that is pretty close to the glow, we'll bring in some of the chartreuse green maybe. I'm thinking maybe that does need a little bit more of a yellower colour on it if that is going to be straw. Let's try this eggshell colour. It's maybe a little bit too warm. No, maybe I think that might actually work. That might actually work. Okay, let's bring in the white gel pen. Pick out a few of these edges that may actually catch a little bit of light. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe that does look as if it's getting lit up by that cauldron glowing there. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and work with the same kind of colours for this bottom part of the broom here, behind our little cat. And we do want to show here that this part of the broom will be getting lit up, but it's not as close to the camera or as close to us as the cat is. So we don't want to have such a light going on with it. We don't want as much white. Yeah, it's hard. Words are hard. We don't want to have so much white going on there because we are further away than the cat, but we don't want it to look as if it is being lit up. So that was the 90% grey, I think. This one is the 50%. Let's maybe come in with that eggshell. And a few highlights with the white gel pen. We are pretty close to the glow, but we don't want to be as well lit up as the actual cat was. So a little bit of a hint of the green there, I think, will do us. The outside of the cat now will go around with the gel pen. And we could probably do with a little bit more shading. I'm going to bring in a little bit of black here as well because we are pretty close to the camera, so we would have more pronounced shadows. Okay, not too bad, I think. Maybe it needs a little bit of white because we did bring some in up here, so... Okay, yeah, I think we can live with that. I'm not sure what colour this here would actually be, but I'm going to do it in the same kind of colour as the broom bristles, I think. Maybe make it a little bit darker if I can, to show a little bit of contrast there. So this is the black, just reinforcing a few of those lines. We don't want super much contrast because we do want the cat and the glow to be the main focus of the picture. But we would be catching a little bit of that glow with the chartreuse green there. bit of white highlighting, and yeah, I'm thinking that's kind of looking middle distance there, closer to the camera than the actual background objects, but not as close as the cat. I think that's about as well as we're going to get with that. Maybe we can add a tiny, tiny little bit of a highlight to the top of that broom handle. And yeah, I think we're good to go with that. That's looking as if it is glowing in the light. Fiddling around with the white highlights, yeah. I should really stop before I spoil it, but yeah, that's looking pretty good, I think. Okay, so this spoon would be wood as well. And we are slightly closer to the camera than the broom handle was, but I'm going to go in with the French greys again to give a little bit of colour here to this wood. You can bring in this sandbar brown, I think. Maybe we might need more of a lighter tan colour to work onto this spoon. We do want it to look as if it is a wooden spoon and not a white spoon just glowing in the cauldron there. Yeah, I think we need more of a wooden spoon kind of colour, a lighter tan brown there. I don't think the eggshell would quite work. We're using so many pencils in this picture, but I think we've got something that is making it worth it. So let's see what we can do with this sienna brown and the beige to go over the top and maybe tone it down a little bit. I'm hoping that would work because this is, yeah, slightly a bit too much red, I think, in this one. Might be competing with our cat a little bit too much. But I'm hoping going over it with this beige maybe that is still a little bit too red. Might use the beige for a few highlights. If I'm on the camera, we can use the beige for a few highlights here, maybe. But I'm thinking maybe a tad too pinkish, sort of down here, contrasting a little bit too much with our green glow. And the white tone it down a little bit. Okay, where's the chartreuse green? I think that's about the right colour for a wooden spoon. It's just contrasting quite a lot with that green we have going on in our potion. So I'm going to hope for the best with some white highlights here. Go over this line where the spoon actually goes into the potion. Okay, I'm still thinking that's a little bit too orange, so I'm going to try and go over it with the French grey, maybe the 50% French grey. Knock it back a little bit. Bring down this shadowy area a little bit further, maybe that will help. Maybe add some darker shadows down here because we are really well lit, but if you have strong lighting you have strong shadows, so maybe that will help. be actually taken out. It's a technique I do use quite a lot when I'm trying to make it look as if glow effects are going on. I go over the white lines on anything that is close up to the source of the glow. Okay, after a little bit of fiddling about that, I'm not 100% sure on my wooden spoon, but I'm going to leave it at that, I think, for now, and work on doing the rest of the picture. And hopefully, once we've gone in and filled in a little bit more of the picture, that might be looking a little bit more kind of as if it blends in, as if it works for a wooden spoon there, being dipped into our potion. I'm thinking for these little mice around the edges of our cauldron here, maybe making their hats the same colour as the witch's hat in the background, but without the green undertones to it so much to push it back into the background, having the blue pencil come through and be the actual colour of the hats here. So this is the night blue, the same one that we used to shade the witch's hat. I think we might have been blending that a little bit into this ocean sapphire. So the same colour as the witch's hat in the background, but a little bit of a stronger colour to it. Maybe bringing in the black for a little bit of extra shadow there. Chartreuse colour for a glow. White highlights. Okay, and I'd like to try maybe doing these stars in the silver, just with a silver gel pen. So you might think because the stars on this witch's hat in the background are slightly lighter than the blue, your brain will maybe tell you that the stars on the witch's hat in the background are also silver, with the colour matching of these hats here. So yeah, but that's working. So I'll go ahead and colour this little hat here as well. I'm going to try not to get my hand in that silver gel pen, which as always is the main kind of hard part for me, not putting my hands in the silver I've already laid down. That's going to work quite well for those witches' hats, I think, on the little mice. And while we are waiting for that silver pen to dry, I think I'll move on to maybe start shading this cauldron here. So I'm coming straight in with the black because witches' cauldrons are black, right? So I'm coming in with the black. I'm not sure whether to maybe bring in some really dark green for these bits here, I'll stick with shading in black and maybe shades of grey, and just having the glow from the cauldron coming through there. This goblet, and whatever this is here, I'm thinking of having that be gold. And that would be using the Castle Arts gold pencils, because I do have my little combination that I do like to use for gold with the Castle Arts gold pencils. This under here, yeah, these fish as well, I'm thinking of having the gold. Maybe that would be too much gold all in one place though, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I'll do the fish first and then see if I would like to do the goblet. But this under here, underneath the fishes, this would be mainly the very dark black with maybe a hint of other colour, maybe the green that I do bring in. What about the seaweed colour that we used for the bottle? Would that blend in with our glowy green colours to colour this cauldron? You might be able to use that. I think another little bit of dimension there to our cauldron, but let's bring in the black for a little bit of shading here. Maybe we need kind of a grey green. How about this pale apple colour? Kind of giving us a little bit of a limited palette idea going on here, but blend the seaweed into this darker colour and have the greens taking over maybe. Maybe this witch is a little progressive. She has a green cauldron. Or maybe it's just the lighting. Maybe the cauldron is black, but it's looking green in this glow of the potion that she has going on. So yeah, either way, I think it's working to show the cauldron is a little bit three-dimensional in any case. Let's add some white. Can we bring the white into this colour as well? Let's see. Might work to blend these colours together very slightly. Need to blend in the shadowy area here a little bit more. bring in the gel pen for a few little white highlights here. And highlight the bottom edge of this kind of lip around the edge of the cauldron, I'm thinking. Maybe that might make my black highlight look a little less stark. Yeah, I'm thinking that's worked. That's what it needed. It needed a little bit of the reflected light underneath the curve of this kind of lip of the cauldron there. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that's going. Bringing in the greens there. And bringing in the greens there, you can see has brought that cauldron into the green glow while still, I think, looking as if it is black. So yeah, a victory there. And I'll carry on and finish that cauldron before I decide what colour to do this carving and the goblets, maybe these vegetables here, all this kind of stuff in the front. The mice, I'm thinking maybe, or what kind of creatures they are. They're not mice, are they? They have fairy tails. Oh, that's interesting. So they can really be any colour, little kind of magical creatures. Okay, I had a little peep in the back of the book, and these little creatures here, those are actually brown in the original art. So maybe they are magical creatures. Maybe they are meant to be mice. I'm not entirely sure. But once we've coloured the rest of this kind of foreground in the front of the picture, I think we'll figure out what colour those creatures are going to be. As usual, I don't have a set in stone plan for most of the colours for this picture here. My main idea was to have this green glow in the cauldron. That was the plan. I built the whole picture around and just figured things around as I went. So yeah, we'll figure it out once we get to it, I think. But so far, I'm pretty happy. I'm thinking this area here is maybe not looking as good as the other side. So I did come in a little bit more with the base colour marker there. But what I think I need to do is blend in this black more into the colour of the actual cauldron there and do the white highlight like we have here. But I'm thinking we would have a shadow underneath this mouse creature. Blend out into the lighter green there. a little bit of grey. I'll try the storm grey. Okay, can we bring in the white highlights and pick that out now? I'm going to go over the wick of this candle here with the fine liner because, yeah, that black isn't really standing out from the black of the cauldron. Maybe a little bit of a white highlight would help with that. You do want that candle to be looking as if it is right at the front of the picture. I'm hoping if we keep it as a white candle, we're maybe shading with a few shades of grey, something like that. That will bring it to the front anyway with all the darker colours behind it. This is the plan. We shall see whether that does work or not. The candle itself, I'd like to stick with having that as a white candle as we are really close to the front of the picture there. So I'm thinking maybe to stick with the French greys to be shading that a little bit. I've also pulled out, I think this one is the 10% French grey, 1068. That's a very, very light, warm grey colour. I've also got the cream colour there and the 50% French grey to maybe add a little bit of definition to the candle. First of all, going in with this 70% French grey for the biggest shadows here under these drips, that kind of stuff. That was the 70% grey. We're moving on to the 50% grey here. I'm keeping the shadows towards the left hand side because our light will be coming from the glow of the cauldron over towards the right here. Here we have the 10% French grey, blending out those colours further towards where we have the glow of the cauldron coming in there. And I was thinking of maybe blending that green out into this cream colour more of a kind of natural wax colour maybe, to give you the idea that that light is coming from that right hand side. Maybe we could bring in that seaweed green again, a little bit of shadow, see how that works. I'll blend that into the warm grey a little bit. And I think that'll work for our candle, but we do need to bring in the chartreuse green, I think. And of course the white highlights. Maybe I'll bring in the 90% French grey here for some darker shadows as we are towards the front of the picture. Define those kind of drips down the side of the candle there. This candlestick here, I've decided instead of using the same kind of gold colour I'm meaning to use for this goblet, I was thinking of making this candlestick more of a pewter grey. So I've pulled out some of the cool greys to maybe get that looking as if it's pewter. I do have the 90% cool grey, 30% cool grey, and the 70% cool grey. I've also pulled out the slate grey there, which is more of a blue tone to it. So maybe we can use those to make the candlestick look like pewter. Also the black for the very darkest shadows. And I'm going to use this kind of underpainting here with the green that we did originally to show me where I'm going to put the shadows and work with that a little bit. Pewter is not super reflective, so we're probably going to put a hint of the green glow maybe on a couple of the edges, but not go super crazy with it. There's the black, so maybe we'll start with this 90% cool grey and blend out with these shadows. There's the 70%. Another 30%. Let's try bringing in a bit of this slate blue then for a blue tone, before we add in a touch of the green for the glow around the edges. A little bit of maybe the lighter green, I think. So I'm going to try this apple green to be the glow of the potion here. Let me bring that into the candle a little bit as well. We'll blend that a little bit with the white, I think. As I was colouring in that candlestick there, I thought maybe instead of bringing in the gold again, like I'm going to use for this goblet, we could use the pewter kind of style colouring here for these fish carved into the cauldron. I think that might work quite well. So I'm going to colour those with the same kind of colours that we used for the candlestick. and see if we can get something going on with the fish. So again, we're starting here with I think this is the 90% cool grey. Yeah, 90% cool grey. Leaving a little bit of a highlight around the bottom there for the reflected light on this little fish carving. But not going into super much detail because the glow and cat in the middle of the picture, that's going to be our focus. So anything else is pretty incidental. We want it to look as if we haven't forgotten it, but we don't have to give it super much details. As with the candlestick, we're going to keep our darkest shading further towards the bottom where we are moving away from the glow of the cauldron. So this is the 70% grey. I'm going to try and add in a little bit of that green glow as we did on the candlestick over here. So where I have marked with the marker, I'm going to try and leave that to have the green pencil coming in. Maybe a little bit more of a glow on these fishes though, because they are closer to the light source. So we'll see how we go. We'll just play around with the same colours we used for the candlestick and see where it kind of leads us. There we go. I've been ahead and coloured those fish in now with the same colours we used for the candlestick, and I think that's working quite well. I've blended the green kind of colour of the highlights for the glow into the blue kind of highlight colour we were using on the candlestick as slate grey was that called? More of a very bluey grey, and I think, yeah, we've got something there that's kind of working. Pewter isn't a very reflective metal, but I'm adding a few highlights here. Maybe it could look like silver instead, I don't know, but it's working, I think, so I'm going to go with it. Move on to colour maybe these vegetables here. Thinking maybe we have an apple here and an onion. I'm not entirely sure what those are supposed to be, but we'll figure it out in a little minute when we get onto those there. Maybe this guy needs a little bit extra shading. He's kind of blending into the shadows behind this fruit and veg here. Okay, the fish are more or less done now, I think. I think that's working pretty well. I'm kind of pleased with how that's going. So moving on to these fruit and vegetables here. I'm not entirely sure what this is in the background there. Maybe an apple, I'm not entirely sure. Could be an egg, I don't know. This is definitely an onion at the front here. And I want to bring in more of the kind of orangey brown, but not quite as saturated as an onion actually is in real life. I'm keeping it to a brown onion. We do want a little bit more of a reddish colour to it as it is nearer to the front, but we don't want to go too saturated so that it steals attention away from our glowing cauldron in the middle there. So maybe we can darken that a little bit in the shadows and blend it more into the cream as it comes up towards the top of the onion here, as this bit is kind of a papery sort of skin that onions have. Maybe that would come in with a little bit more of a greyish colour. We have the 10% French grey. The onion itself, maybe we can bring in a sandbar brown colour. This isn't quite the natural colour of an onion, I don't think, but I want to keep within the kind of limited palette we do seem to have going on with this picture. And not go too saturated, although I do want a little bit more colour here going on in the front of the picture. Maybe we can bring in this 90% warm grey to emphasise some of this texture for the skin. So this fruit here I coloured as an apple, and that was by using the Castle Arts Harmonious pencils again that I brought in the background here. The seaweed colour that we used for the wine bottle there, the pine green that we used for shading in the background, wild thyme that I'm not sure if we used it as a highlight on these apples or not, but yeah, I used that one to blend into the greens there. And then I brought in a couple of the Prismacolor greens that we were using for the glow of the potion to add onto the top. I also brought in some kind of apple-like markings to it with the burnt ochre and with the darker greens as well to give a little bit of an apple texture to that fruit there. And there is this random leaf that's kind of sprouting here in the middle. I just coloured with the darker, more desaturated greens, added a few white highlights with the pencil, and I think that little still life in the corner there is pretty much done now. I've decided that I'm going to try and make these little creatures into mice. I'm not sure if their ears really fit with mice, but I want to make them into mice-like creatures with the kind of hairless pink tail that mice have. So I'm going to try and thin them out a little bit by bringing in the black that we've used for the cauldron and thinning out the little tail that we have going on. Making the end a little bit more pointed to maybe turn these creatures into more like mice I kind of imagine them to be, maybe like white mice. So hopefully we can make this work. We'll see what we can do. I'm going to bring in that seaweed green again to blend that out into the black of the cauldron a little bit and not look so obvious that we have adjusted that tail somewhat. Okay, that's not so bad. Bring in this pine green. As these little creatures I want to have as white mice, I'm going to bring in this pine green for a little bit of shading in the shadows, as they are being lit by this potion quite a lot. So I think that might be reflecting into their fur. And then maybe bring in the blue greys that we were using on this candlestick a little bit to give a little bit more of a white fur effect. With a bit of luck, give them maybe a pinkish tone to their feet and inside their ears. Not sure what these little lines here would be, but they're not exactly mice, they're kind of mouse creatures, so we can play with it a tiny little bit, I'm guessing. So let's bring in this 30% cool grey to again add to those shadow areas a little bit. Okay, yep, that's looking okay. We'll bring in the chartreuse green to accentuate this glow a little bit as well. Give them some additional white highlights here as they are pretty close to the glow we've got going on in our cauldron there. Maybe give them a few little kind of whiskers. Add in a few lines of fur. A little bit more of a shadow I think we're needing, so this is a 90% cool grey. We would have some fairly dark shadows because we're quite close to this fairly bright glow from our potion there. I found a few desaturated pinks here to maybe bring in for our little mouse creature's tail, his hands and feet. We have the Dusty Rose there, number 6 HA. We have Amaretto 71 HA and Rosy Stone 72 HA, which I think will end up looking pink enough to maybe give us the colours that we're wanting here for our little mouse creature. Most of these bits that are closest to the glow would be quite bright white highlighted. And originally I did end up colouring the little guy's nose with the grey, but yeah, I think that would be actually white for his little nose there. That one was the Amaretto. This is the slightly lighter Rosy Stone. And this is the pretty light Dusty Rose. Gives that pink colour to his feet and his tail without going super saturated, because again we don't really want to take any attention away from the glow of our potion here, which would be glowing onto his little hand there a little bit. Okay, time for some white highlights. Maybe darken this green, I think, around where our little creature is sitting, so there is more of a contrast between his white fur and the potion, but we don't want to go too dark as we are glowing there. And these little bits, I'm not entirely sure what they're meant to be, but we'll just highlight those a little bit as well, and hopefully they'll blend into the background a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and colour the other little mousy creature, the other side, in the same kind of colours. I'll catch up with you again and we'll work on this goblet in the corner, and then to all intents and purposes I think we will be pretty much done. I'm just filling in his eyes there to give him a more kind of natural mousy looking eyes. Go. I think that looks a little bit better. moving on to this goblet in the corner here, and I am still intending to have this to be a gold goblet. So I'm going to grab my gold combinations from the Castle Arts Gold, and we'll start working on this bit here. Maybe I'll have this, looks like a second kind of utensil or something inside the goblet. I'll make that into the pewter colour. Maybe this is another little sliver of apple we're seeing there, so that would be kind of a dark green blending into the shadows as we are getting quite further away from the light and we are behind the goblet. So I'll grab my colours for the goblet, we'll work on that. Then there'll just be another couple of finishing touches and we'll be all done. So this is the combination of pencils I usually use for gold. We have slate grey, these are Castle Arts gold pencils. We have slate grey 200 GP, we have earth green 201 GP, we have green gold 076 GP, and I've brought out Tuscan yellow light. I don't think we're going to be having super much bright highlights, and where we do it will be this green colour and the white more than likely. So I'm going to lean more towards the darker kind of slate grey, maybe bringing in the black towards this bottom area here. And again, I'm using the kind of guidelines I laid down with the original background marker to show me where my shadows would actually be. So I'm going in first with the slate grey, and I'll work down through the different kind of tones or shades of pencils. I'm going to try bringing in this apple green, is this one? Yeah, apple green. I'm working in the kind of shine that we will have coming from the glowing cauldron there. This is the chartreuse green. I'm going over quite a lot of the top part of this goblet here because I want this to be rather shiny. Even though the colours I've used for the gold are kind of a dull gold colour, we do want this to be fairly shiny and metallic, so I'm bringing in a lot of that glow colour there. I'll maybe blend that out with the white a little bit. We don't want too much plain white paper to be going on, because that would be competing a little bit with the glow from the cauldron. Yep, I think that's working okay. Blend in that green a little bit. Use the Tuscan yellow maybe to blend the green into the more gold colours of the pencils there. Thinking that dark colour needs to blend slightly. Either that or we can add in a few more of the kind of line marks to show the gold is fairly roughly cast. Might add in a little bit of black right at the edges here, so shadows would be starting to creep back in there. Okay, this little bit here I've decided to make the pewter colour, so I'm just going to shade that with the same kinds of grey that we use for the candlestick and the fishes. That's the 90% cool grey. This one is the 70% cool grey. We have the 30% cool grey. And the slate colour to add a little bit of a blue to it. And that will have a little bit of the green glow with the apple green there. And bring in the black for the very corner there where it would be going away inside the goblet. Blend with the white a little bit. This pewter isn't all that reflective, but we will add a little bit of a white highlight to the edges just to make it look as if it is in the front of the picture there in the very foreground. And then this little bit here, I'm not entirely sure what this actually is, but I'm going to colour it as if it is another little piece of apple like we have going on there. So there do seem to be quite a few apples in this picture. So I'm going to go into this one with the seaweed colour and the pine green from the Castle Arts Harmonious pencils. We have this pale apple colour. Maybe that might be catching a tiny little bit of a glow, so we'll have a tiny little bit of that chartreuse green. We'll just beef up this shadow a little bit with the black, just to make sure we have a difference there between the things that are further ahead and the things that are further back. And I'm thinking that we're pretty much done now, so I'll zoom us out and we'll have a look at the whole picture. So here we are with our finished picture, and yeah, I'm really happy with the results we have ended up with there. I was really a little bit reluctant to be starting this picture because it's my favourite picture from this book. It's one I've picked out pretty much every Halloween since I've had the book to be colouring, and I've been a little bit too intimidated to be starting it, but I just jumped in this time, went for it, and yeah, I'm really pleased with how it has turned out. I did remember to scan it in before I did start, so I do have another copy in case I do want to colour it again. But yeah, it was a little bit of an experiment trying to get this glow effect happening here in the middle of the page with the glowing potion in the cauldron glowing up to the cat and reflecting on all these objects towards the front of the picture there. The background I kept fairly subdued, pretty much monochrome there, with just a little bit of colour slipping in for a few objects that were closer to us, to the camera. It was a little bit daunting as well, just going over the whole of the background with one marker and hoping I'd be able to pick out the objects and still have it looking as if there was stuff going on in the background there. But I think we did accomplish what we actually set out to do. So yeah, all in all, really happy with the outcome of that picture. Hopefully you guys did enjoy following along as I figured out how to get this effect that I was aiming for here. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Take care everyone, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye!